In the panic of terrifying doomsday scenarios, the drying up of the Euphrates River seemed to add fuel to the fire. The once mighty river now has dwindled to a mere trickle, leaving behind a cracked and parched riverbed that stretches as far as the eye can see. Along with the shrinking of the river, more previously buried ancient findings are emerging to expose the Euphrates mystery. Ancient caves beneath the Euphrates are one of the most amazing discoveries uncovered by experts recently. And the haunting sounds within these caves are perhaps even more significant. Join us as we dig deep into this remarkable tale of history, mystery, and perhaps a warning for generations to come as we uncover the secrets of the Euphrates River. Number 1. Creepy sounds. Scary things that have been happening at the Euphrates River. The spooky, creepy, and unexplained sounds appear to be coming from under the riverbed. We can hear it clearly through the video captured by local people. In this video, the man was out walking the dried-up riverbank at dusk. Then, he heard howls that sounded like a call to prayer. Well, to be honest, those sounds made me quite shiver. It reminds me of a cry foreshadowing the 3 great tribulations to come in Revelation 8:13. As I watched, I heard an eagle that was flying in midair call out in a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth because of the trumpet blasts about to be sounded by the other 3 angels." Woe means grief, anguish, affliction. The 3 woes of Revelation are the final judgment God pronounces on the evil inhabitants of the earth in order to spur them to repentance. The 3 woes are indeed a time of great anguish and affliction for those who have pledged their allegiance to the Antichrist during the end times. The number 7 is significant in Revelation, and the 3 woes will come toward the end of the 7-year tribulation period, right before the second coming of Christ. God's judgments during the tribulation are pictured as 7 seals, opened one at a time. The 7th seal reveals the 7 trumpet judgments. The 5th, 6th, and 7th trumpets are called the 3 woes. The first woe is revealed after the 5th trumpet judgment. This woe involves something like locusts that have the ability to sting like a scorpion. Generally, these are not accepted as literal locusts because of their description and because they come from the abyss and have a demonic overlord. These creatures are permitted to harm only those people who do not have the seal of God on their forehead. Those bearing God's seal are the 144,000 or possibly all believers during that time. These demonic locusts are allowed to torment unbelievers for 5 months with painful stings. Although victims will long for death, they will not be granted that release. The second woe is revealed after the 6th trumpet judgment. This woe begins when a voice commands, as written in Revelation 9:14-16. Release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. These 4 angels are demons who were cast from heaven along with Satan. God is right now keeping them imprisoned until the appointed time. These angels and their armies, numbering 200 million, are released to kill a third of mankind. After the second woe passes, there comes a clear division in the book with the announcement from heaven, the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ. Revelation 11:15. In other words, this final stage of judgment will be the end, and righteousness will be restored to the earth. The third woe is revealed after the 7th trumpet judgment. This woe is parallel to the trumpet that sounds in Joel 2 and signals the consummation of God's plan for the entire world. This third woe marks the finishing of God's judgment on sin. It occupies the book of Revelation through the 19th chapter, when Christ's kingdom is established on earth. Incorporated within this third and final woe are the 7 bowls of God's wrath, described in Revelation 16:1-21. This series of judgments is the greatest horror the citizens of earth have ever seen. Jesus said in Matthew 24:22, "If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive." Number 2. Ancient caves. a bunch of ancient caves were revealed when the Euphrates River water receded. These caves are so mysterious, their origin is still unknown. However, these caves seem like they could have held someone or something prisoner at one time. What's more, in these areas, archaeologists have been recording sounds coming from the ground. Sounds that make your skin crawl because they remind you of the monsters in your nightmares. Groans, moans, and growls can be heard on these recordings, and even what seems to be something moving around with chains connected to it. Could these be the fallen ones preparing to be released from their chambers under the great Euphrates? Will they come? And if they do, will they truly take a third of human existence with them? Only time will tell. Number 3. Gold Mountain. Other videos showed gold miners around the Euphrates River. What was surprising was that the gold was scattered like stones. What a shock after seeing this. Is this the golden mountain that the prophet foretold Prophet Muhammad prophesied? Soon the river Euphrates will disclose the treasure, the mountain of gold. So, who will be present at that time should not take anything from him. Sahih Bukhari. Judging from the video miners take gold, it is easy to realize that the size of gold equals the size of a pebble. Thus, it can be ascertained that there is a large gold source around the location. If this golden mountain did exist, it would surely cause great enmity between mankind. The Euphrates River and the golden mountain that shocked the world gave a signal that the apocalypse was near, as the Prophet Muhammad said, when the Euphrates River dries up in this country. The drying up and a gold mountain of the Euphrates River is also a clear fulfillment of Bible prophecy and a sign that we must be ready for Jesus' return. As stated in Matthew 24:44, "Therefore you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." Paul notes in 2 Corinthians 1:6-8 that when Jesus comes back to consummate his kingdom, God will repay those who have afflicted Christians even as he gives his people relief. Then, Jesus will appear with the angels in flaming fire, inflicting vengeance on those who do not know God and on those who do not obey the gospel of our Lord Jesus. This is a comforting truth for believers, for it reminds us that our Creator has not forgotten us and that he will one day set all things right. John Calvin writes, "Christ will be a most strict avenger of the injuries which the wicked inflict upon us." 2 Thessalonians 1:9-10 expands on this teaching regarding the appointed end for those who impenitently reject the truth of God. We read that, "They will suffer the punishment of eternal destruction, away from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of his might." Some have interpreted this as meaning that the wicked will not suffer eternal conscious punishment, but will be annihilated. This view is wrong for several reasons. First, the phrase eternal destruction appears outside of the New Testament only one other time in ancient Jewish literature, and there it means eternal conscious punishment. Moreover, Paul relies heavily on Isaiah 66:15-24 in 2 Thessalonians 1, and Isaiah there refers to enduring punishment, not annihilation. Finally, Jesus himself assumes the reality of an eternal hell in his teaching. Matthew 25:41, Mark 9:43. Scripture is clear. Unending, conscious punishment is the lot of all those who do not believe the gospel. The destiny God has appointed for believers will be far different. Christ will be glorified in us. 2 Thessalonians 1:10. We will be like Jesus and thus enjoy eternal blessedness. 1 John 3:2. Number 4. Ancient Tunnel. In another remarkable discovery, a tunnel has recently been discovered with the decrease in the water level of the Euphrates River. What's notable, the videos documenting by local people showed the ancient tunnel that leads to the underground with a very perfect building structure, which also has stairs which are neatly arranged and are still intact to this day. That raised the question, who has built all of this? Some say that this is a relic of ancient people that is still preserved today. However, A rumor among the locals is that the tunnel leads to where the angels are imprisoned. As mentioned in the Bible, to be precise, in Revelation 9:13-19. Then the sixth angel blew his trumpet, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar before God, saying to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, "Release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates." So, the four angels who had been prepared for the hour, the day, the month, and the year were released to kill a third of mankind. The number of mounted troops was twice 10,000 times 10,000. I heard their number. And this is how I saw the horses in my vision and those who rode them. They wore breastplates the color of fire, and of sapphire, and of sulfur, and the heads of the horses were like lions' heads, and fire and smoke and sulfur came out of their mouths. By these three plagues, a third of mankind was killed, by the fire and smoke and sulfur coming out of their mouths. For the power of the horses is in their mouths and in their tails, for their tails are like serpents with heads, and by means of them they wound. Revelation 16:12-16 says, "The sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up, to prepare the way for the kings from the east. And I saw, coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, three unclean spirits like frogs. For they are demonic spirits, performing signs, who go abroad to the kings of the whole world, to assemble them for battle on the great day of God the Almighty. And they assembled them at the place that in Hebrew is called Armageddon." In addition, according to native folklores of the Mesopotamians or Iraqis, the ancient Euphrates tunnel could stand as a remarkable testament to the ingenuity and engineering prowess of ancient Mesopotamian civilizations. This subterranean passage, believed to have been constructed during the reign of Queen Semiramis, or more likely under the Neo-Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar Seku, exemplifies the advanced architectural and engineering skills that flourished in the region. Spanning beneath the Euphrates River, this tunnel was designed to connect the two halves of Babylon, which the river divided. Number 5. Ancient city on the Euphrates. The ancient city of lies now in a sandy, desert-like landscape on the edge of the river Euphrates. Looking at it now, you wonder why anyone would have built a city here, but it has taken thousands of years to turn this region into a desert. Once it was fertile and green. According to the Bible, was the birthplace of Abraham. The city was built around 4500–4000 BC, 1,000 years before the Dutch Hunebeds. It was originally a village where the inhabitants farmed and tended cattle. At the beginning of the 3rd millennium, a number of city-states flourished in Mesopotamia under the Sumerian civilization. Protected by powerful gods, each had its own royal house and fought for mastery over the region. One of the cities was Archaeological finds have revealed the high level of industry reached in these cities. They traded with distant merchants, cedarwood from the Lebanon, silver from Mount Amana, and lapis lazuli from today's Afghanistan. Finds from royal graves in prove that they had access to ample quantities of valuable materials and that craftsmanship in this period reached a higher level than anywhere else in the world. Written texts have also been found which tell us about the crafts and how people worked. Commissions for making objects came from the temples and palaces. Agriculture was improved by digging channels to irrigate the land between the Euphrates and the Tigris. These channels were also used to transport goods. Around 2300 BC, the Akkadian king Sargon conquered the region around the Persian Gulf to Ebla. When this empire collapsed 2 centuries later, under kings of the 3rd dynasty, 2112–2004 BC, took over the hegemony between the two rivers. Was at that time an important center for the worship of the moon god Nana, and many of the Babylonian princes played a part in restoring the temples at in honor of this god. Was probably abandoned in the 4th century BC after the river changed its course. Until halfway through the 19th century, only the remains of the ziggurat, that ISS temple tower, could be seen above the desert landscape. Then, excavations began at the site. First, the English consul in Basra found texts which appeared to refer to the ruins of Ur. In 1922, the first large-scale excavations were carried out by the British Museum and the University of Pennsylvania. Then, in 1927, came the sensational discovery of a king's tomb. During the excavations at the burial site, 2,000 trenches were discovered for ordinary mortals and 17 tombs for the wealthy, made of stone and bricks. Many of the tombs had been plundered in antiquity, but the excavations still uncovered many exceptional finds. Examples include the tombs of Arbaji and King Puabi, which contained the mortal remains of 74 people, and the grave of King Mescalamdug. These tombs contained, among other things, gold dishes, jewels, hundreds of objects made of lapis lazuli, decorated harps, the magnificent golden helmet of Mescalamdug, and his dagger with a gold blade and a hilt of lapis lazuli. Based on these grave goods and the large amount of human and animal remains found in the tombs, the archaeologists came to the conclusion that the dead princes had been accompanied in their afterlife by a large retinue, complete with their horses, which had first been drugged and then put to death. This is similar to rituals which were performed at that time in Egypt. Number 6. 3,400-year-old lost city. The lost city of Atlantis isn't real, but this one was. As Euphrates' water level falls, an international group of archaeologists has unearthed a 3,400-year-old city under the bed of the river. The Bronze Age village, erected sometime between 1475 BC and 1275 BC, when the Mitanni Empire ruled over the northern Euphrates-Tigris region, emerged out of the Mosul Reservoir on the Tigris in Kemune just a few years ago, as drought in the region has caused local waters to recede. The mud-brick-walled settlement consists of a palace, several towers, and multi-story buildings, as well as other large structures, and may represent the ancient town of Zakiku, a storied trade hub within the kingdom of Mitanni. For those who don't know, Zakiku was founded around 1800 BC by the Old Babylonian Empire that ruled Mesopotamia between the 19th and 15th centuries BC. With only water and soil in the area, Zakiku was established to take advantage of the traffic of caravans and a flourishing trade route in the Near East, which includes the present-day Middle East, Turkey, and Egypt. The trading post grew into an important commercial city in the region for about 600 years before it was hit by an earthquake and later abandoned. Zakiku disappeared altogether in the 1980s when, as part of the Mosul Dam project, built under the late Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein, it was flooded and submerged. Previously known as Saddam Dam, it is Iraq's largest and most important water reservoir used for downstream irrigation. It's since returned to the surface amid a severe drought in the region since December 2021, which has forced nearby communities in need of fresh water to draw from the dam. What's notable, besides the grand architecture, researchers also uncovered more than 100 cuneiform tablets, some still folded within clay envelopes, which are said to date back to a period just after the disaster. It is close to a miracle that cuneiform tablets made of unfired clay survived so many decades underwater. The writings could provide valuable information about the society's migration and the end of the Mitanni era. Number 7. The Tomb of King Gilgamesh. In a world-shocking revelation, archaeologists unveiled that the tomb of the giant Gilgamesh has discovered under Euphrates' riverbed. Gilgamesh, the best known of all ancient Mesopotamian heroes. Numerous tales in the Akkadian language have been told about Gilgamesh, and the whole collection has been described as an odyssey, the odyssey of a king who did not want to die. Historical evidence for Gilgamesh's existence is found in inscriptions crediting him with the building of the Great Walls of Uruk, modern-day Warqa, Iraq. which, in the story, are the tablets upon which he first records his quest for the meaning of life. He is also referenced in the Sumerian king list, Sa-wo 2100 BCE, and is mentioned by known historical figures of his time, such as King Enmebaragesi of Kish, besides the legends which grew up around his reign. Gilgamesh's father is said to have been the priest king Lugalbanda, who is featured in 2 Sumerian poems concerning his magical abilities, which predate Gilgamesh, and his mother, the goddess Ninsun, also known as Ninsumun, the Holy Mother and Great Queen. Accordingly, Gilgamesh was a demigod who was said to have lived an exceptionally long life. The Sumerian king list records his reign as 126 years, and to be possessed of superhuman strength. Gilgamesh is widely accepted as the historical 5th king of Uruk, who reigned in the 26th century BCE. His influence is thought to have been so profound that myths of his divine status grew up around his deeds and finally culminated in the tales that inform the Epic of Gilgamesh. According to the death of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh finally was buried at the bottom of the Euphrates when the waters parted after he died. In April of 2003, a German-led expedition has discovered what is thought to be the entire city of Uruk, including, where the Euphrates once flowed, the last resting place of its famous king. As Jörg Fassbinder of the Bavarian Department of Historical Monuments in Munich told the BBC World Service's Science in Action program, "We found just outside the city an area in the middle of the former Euphrates River, the remains of such a building which could be interpreted as a burial. I don't want to say definitely it was the grave of King Gilgamesh, but it looks very similar to that described in the epic." He said the amazing discovery of the ancient city under the Iraqi desert had been made possible by modern technology. By differences in magnetization in the soil, you can look into the ground, Mr. Fassbinder added. The difference between mud bricks and sediments in the Euphrates River gives a very detailed structure. This creates a magnetogram, which is then digitally mapped, effectively giving a town plan of Uruk. The most surprising thing was that the team found structures already described by Gilgamesh. When the archaeologists covered more than 100 hectares, they found garden structures and field structures as described in the epic, and they found Babylonian houses. But he said the most astonishing find was an incredibly sophisticated system of canals. Very clearly, we can see in the canals some structures showing that flooding destroyed some houses, which means it was a highly developed system. It was like Venice in the desert. Despite the authenticity of this discovery is debatable, one thing is for sure. Advanced technologies are bringing archaeologists ever closer to understanding the lives of our ancestors. In other words, we're at the cutting edge of trying to understand who we are as humans. Number 8. The ancient city of Dura Europos. One of the most significant discoveries made due to the drying up of the Euphrates River is the ancient city of Dura Europos. This city was founded around 300 BC by Seleucus I Nicator, who founded the Seleucid Empire as one of the diadochi of Alexander the Great. In 113 BC, Parthians conquered the city and held it with one brief Roman intermission, 114 AD, until 165 AD. Under Parthian rule, it became an important provincial administrative center. The Romans decisively captured Dura Europos in 165 AD and greatly enlarged it as their easternmost stronghold in Mesopotamia until it was captured by the Sasanian Empire after a siege in 256-257 AD. Its population was deported, and the abandoned city eventually became covered by sand and mud and disappeared from sight. Dura Europos is of extreme archaeological importance and was called the Pompeii of the desert. As it was abandoned after its conquest in 256-57 AD, nothing was built over it, and no later building programs obscured the architectural features of the ancient city. Its location on the edge of empires made for a commingling of cultural traditions, much of which was preserved under the city's ruins. Some remarkable finds have been brought to light, including numerous temples, wall decorations, inscriptions, military equipment, tombs, and even dramatic evidence of the Sasanian siege. Number 9. The truth behind Euphrates dying. As told, the Tigris-Euphrates river system is drying out. A government report in 2021 even warned that the rivers could run dry by 2040 due to declining water levels and droughts driven by climate change. But what is causing the river to dry up? Well, in fact, the Euphrates problems begin more than 1,000 miles upstream, near the river's catchment area, below the Taurus Mountains in eastern Turkey. In a headlong rush to generate electricity and create arable land, the Turkish government has been on a dam-building boom for 2 generations. In 1974, the Keben Dam was opened on the upper Euphrates. The Ataturk Dam was finished in 1990. The ongoing Southeastern Anatolia project, a $32 billion scheme to build 22 dams and 19 hydroelectric plants on both the Tigris and the Euphrates, will eventually provide nearly 1/4 of Turkey's electricity. Syria, meanwhile, built the Tabqa Dam upstream from Raqqa in the 1970s and added a few more dams on the Euphrates and its tributaries before the civil war ground development to a halt. Since the Turkish and Syrian dams began operating in the 1970s, the water flow into Iraq has dropped by nearly 2/3. For decades, Iraq has been squabbling with both neighbors about getting its fair share of the water. The dispute nearly flared into violence in the early 1970s, after Turkey and Syria diverted the Euphrates into a series of reservoirs and nearly dried out the river downstream in Iraq. In response, the Iraqi government constructed a series of canals linking the Euphrates to Lake Tharthar, a reservoir northwest of Baghdad. With talks long frozen, Iraq has been dependent on oft-disputed arrangements with its upstream partners. Turkey will give us some water, but it's mostly wastewater and irrigation spill-off, says Mutaz Al-Dabas, the Baghdad University water resources expert. The quality is not the same as before. Global warming is adding to Iraq's woes. Decreased rainfall totals have already been recorded throughout the Euphrates basin. By the end of this century, according to some climate models, the average temperature in the river basin is likely to increase by 5 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit, which would cause higher rates of evaporation and an additional 30 to 40% decline in rainfall. The first national climate communication of 2016 identified marshes, forests, mountain areas, lakes, and surface waters, such as rivers, as some of the sites that are most vulnerable to the effects of scarcity and climate change. While some autochthonous populations of the 3 susceptible areas have been displaced and forced to emigrate from their historic habitats. This will lead to greater competition for water and land, which is likely unmanageable by traditional institutional tools available to the state, particularly amidst an increasingly common trend of militarized response to the severity of environmental impact. The militarization of water and climate represents a significant threat to national security, leading to the fragmentation of social contracts, the collapse of the social institution, the emergence of superior and vulnerable groups, and the disintegration of historical Iraq as a result of an environmental collapse that might resemble the abrupt climatic end of the Neolithic era in Iraq around 3800 BC, the Ubaid period, which was caused by the rise in the Gulf's sea level and the beginning of dune formations alongside increasing drought and desertification under scorching temperatures. That's all the information that we have for you today. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell so you never miss out on future episodes. And be sure to also tell us what you think about today's content. Everyone's support motivates us to continue delivering quality content and to always improve. As always, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.